What is going on, folks? Welcome to season 6. Welcome to the 100th episode of Secondhand Talent. As usual, it is your boy Steiner here with the 100th episode of Secondhand Talent. He needs no introduction, but we're going to give him one anyway. Legendary poster artist and just artist extraordinaire, Marq Spusta is in the house. Marq, thank you so much for being a part of the show. We're so glad to have you here on this momentous occasion.
Thanks for inviting me into your house to hang out.
Oh, it's a real pleasure to have you here. And, we're going to start it out the same way we always do. I know I've been bugging you to be on the show for a while. And I'm kind of curious, when I first mentioned it to you, maybe think on it a minute. I don't know. But what was the first thing that came to mind when you heard the term secondhand talent?
It didn't register. I now know what your podcast is about to some extent. So going back to that initial thing, I don't think I pieced together what it was fully about. I think the Fleetwood Mac song "Secondhand News" just kept playing in my head. But I like the secondhand talent. I mean, you're interviewing talented people. What makes them secondhand? I know now, but
well, I'm glad you asked. I mean, the real message of the show, or one of the main ones, is that the folks on the stage are talented, but it takes a village to put on a concert. Everybody working around the band and with the band is just as talented at what they do. It's just often overlooked. And partly, I don't know if this has been said on the show before, but I've always kind of referred to myself as a secondhand comedian, in the sense that, my name's never really on the marquee, but hey, you need 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, call me, I got you. I got material ready. But it's just because so many of my friends are in the industry doing all of this work, similar to a lot of the folks that I interview. I've done a lot of those things. I was looking for a platform that was asking for or told those stories, and it didn't exist. So I made it. Here we are.
Wonderful. I mean, my industry has it too, just even as an artist. I mean, there's so many people that need to prop up our world to make it exist, including people like you, just kind of spreading the word in a different way. Our art is so visual. I do not like writing about art, but I think I'm going to enjoy talking to you about what I've made and where we've.
Well, I hope so. I really do. This is a real treat for me, as most regular viewers, watchers, readers, and listeners know. I only, for the most part, unless the guest makes the clothes, wear Marq's shirts on my show, because they're just some of my favorite art to have. And it's really, where I want to start is, what came first, the love of drawing or the love of music, and how did they intertwine?
The love of art. Music. I think I was an artist when I was really young. Always an artist. I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old right now, and they're all into music. But the 9-year-old and the 12-year-old, I feel like that's almost an age when you're starting to kind of figure out, what do I like that's cool, or what gets me into music. I think before that, it becomes a lot of just what you're hearing, what people are singing around you. So I think for me, even discovering the music I liked came in those early preteen years, kind of. My parents listened to good stuff, classic rock and all that. And I even think, like, when I was growing up, we kind of went from albums to CDs, and that artwork was kind of on display. My dad kind of rebought his CD collection from all his old records, which I didn't really see that often. He was listening to radio, and then the CDs came out. And I think that's when those two things really started to click together. When I saw like all the 70s album covers and then kind of became into like, you know, the 90s grunge scene and some of those album covers, and I started going to record stores. Um, Growing up in rural Wisconsin, I didn't really see posters and on all that stuff for a long time. So it was more like those album covers and some skateboard stuff. But that's where that first combination kind of happened for me, was maybe just seeing some CDs and albums, and that was the most interesting art I think I had seen to that point, in a way.
So talk a little bit just about, because you do have such a unique style and interpretation. It's almost how a previous guest of the show, Sean Bayous, who does graphite surrealism, you know, he grew up in a real rural area and, you know, was inspired by what was around him and just made it weird. And I absolutely love his work, and you know, same as yours. And I'm just curious, when did you start with the art, and when, you know, kind of how did that come about?
Um, I don't know. I've just always done it. I think in the beginning I was inspired by, um, I mean, you got some fuzzy creatures around me. You showed me the guy with the candle or the cupcake on your water bottle, my Celebrate image, which I don't know. I look at that now, I'm like, well, that's pretty inspired by Jim Henson, you know, Sesame Street and that kind of stuff. I'm just kind of adding a different tone to it now in my older years. So I always say, like, my inspiration for art, I really haven't got rid of my first inspirations. Dr. Seuss, Jim Henson, even like Garfield. I love drawing Garfield. I just thought Jim Davis was so simple, and his drawings, I just love those big eyes and the way he drew, the cleanliness of it. Bill Watterson, Calvin and Hobbes was just a huge influence on me growing up. Even, and then I got even inspired by, like, you know, The Far Side or something, where it's like the one image and you get joy from it. You get a joke from it. It's just one thing. Yeah. And I always kind of go back to that when I talk about gig posters, because I love doing like the one image, like putting everything into one thing. And I think I like doing that as a kid. I did do more comic books and stuff as a kid. That's kind of what was around. Mad Magazine offshoots and things like that were a big influence. So I was always into kind of the humor aspect of art. And eventually started merging art and music again when those album covers would come out and stuff. I have old sketchbooks from like the 90s of like just redrawing the cover to Siamese Dream by Smashing Pumpkins or things like that. Like I was, you know, or redoing band logos or things like that. So um, I found a joy in how divergent album covers could be and how many topics you could put into them. And I'd say the same for bands in general. It just leaves you kind of for a commission project, it doesn't hold you back. It almost kind of pushes you forward in a direction of like, go have fun in this playground visually for this band.
So what's really unique to me about your style is, and we'll get to the screen printing aspect of it later, but the use of pencils. I find that to me that's the most fascinating part about it, is correct me if I'm wrong, but the Prismacolor pencils at some point. But I'm curious though, was it always pencil drawings? Is that from that comic book inspiration?
Prismacolors have been around for a very long time. I've had them in my life for a very long time. Their production has since changed, and I have lost a little love for them. I think they used to be produced in Canada, and then they moved overseas somewhere. I'm not sure they're exact production right now. But anyway, I had like, you get like a set of 36. It was like my best colored pencil set. Yeah, I just did a lot of colored drawings. I started playing with it in college when I was learned to paint, and colored pencil was maybe a quicker way to do it. I lived in Australia for a while during college and didn't have a lot of good paint sets, but I had Prismacolors, so I was doing a lot then. And then I got a children's book offer, and I did All the Way to the Ocean. It's my one children's book, and I illustrated that completely in Prismacolors. And so I had to buy a ton of them. Um,
Wow.
so I had like two big bins of just Prismacolors, just everything, and a lot of them were down to stubs. And I realized that process actually hurt my hand, putting down like all these layers with these colored pencils, that actually kind of the pressure matters, how much you lay down. And so then my Prismacolors sat around, and then I started screen printing more, and I realized how nicely Prismacolors went on top of screen printing. And so really that's what I do with it now.
I'm so glad you said that, because one of the most fascinating things to me about your prints is that I always feel like I have to look twice to see if it's hand drawn or if it's actually screen printed or a mix of both. And that's in almost every single, print that comes out. And I think it's a combination of, like you said, the translation to the paper, but also the color choice. But it's so vibrant that it almost appears like it's just a genuine drawing every time.
That's fun. I'm glad you feel that way. I'm I'm screen printing. I mean, a lot of people are doing very different styles in screen printing, the way they're getting their blending of colors. Screen printing is supposed to be very, you print a red, it's either going to be a dot coming through that screen or not. It's kind of, full or not. It's not supposed to be blended. So an artist like Emic or NC Winters or those guys, they have these really soft, nice blends, where they're kind of getting, it's not even a dot pattern. It's just kind of these washes of little dots overlapping to get all these soft backgrounds and beautiful things. I'm kind of drawing. I'm kind of treating it like colored pencils a lot of times, where I'm just kind of grabbing a color, drawing with that color, drawing on top of it with another color, letting those colors overlap in some places, and then and doing different things like that. So, um, my Prismacolor life of using those. That's kind of how I like doing my work digitally for screen prints. I'm just kind of drawing as if I had somewhat transparent pencils, and I'm kind of going about it that way.
That's a wild concept, transparent pencils. I feel like, first of all, great name for a band. Transparent pencils. I mean, it's up there.
Yes,
Australia,
indeed.
I didn't know that you wrote a children's book,
I
but
didn't write it. I just illustrated it.
illustrated, excuse me.
Ben Harper's brother actually wrote it,
All right.
which is some of my path into the music scene, because that came first.
So backtracking just a little bit, you mentioned this move or this stint rather in Australia. How did you get from Wisconsin to Australia? I mean, I'm in Chicago here, so I feel like that's a reasonable distance, but Australia seems kind of like a few extra hours on the plane, maybe.
Yeah, gosh, it's as far as you can go, but yet it's so. I mean, I didn't have to learn another language. I just got a different culture. I think, it was about the experience, but I think it was also kind of a little bit of a reset for me. I was starting to come close to finishing school in graphic design. I had art as part of it, but maybe I longed for more art in my education. I was around a lot of artists who were really exploring painting or sculpture or pottery, and I was kind of stuck on the computer doing typesetting and cool logos and stuff. I mean, I do love graphic design, and I had a career in it after school, but I needed a break from it. I needed a break from the computers. So and just the focus of finishing school as a graphic designer. I just wanted a little bit of room to keep my art dream alive. I went to Australia and took mostly art courses and Aboriginal studies courses, stuff like that. And I just got a chance to like paint. I had painting. I had an early printmaking course, another kind of fundamentals of design or art course, and kind of had this very different school than the school I went to in Wisconsin was very nice and focused. I thought they really did a good job making artists into professionals. Um, but I kind of saw my professional path. I saw this graphic design path. It was there. It was laid out in front of me. I was good. Um, I got an early start at graphic design. I worked at an agency in high school. They came to talk to our high school. I approached them. So I was like an intern working on computers before I even went to college. So I liked where I was heading there. I just needed a break, and I've done that a few times in my life where my career almost seems like it's going in kind of the boring, predictable way. And then I move somewhere weird or go into the mountains or into the woods for 6 months to a year and come out a better artist. And that Australia stint was kind of a little bit of that for me. One of the first experiences like that, where I just took a break from life to see if I could be an artist. Um,
And how did you feel coming back to Wisconsin from that? You know, I mean, I can relate actually. You know, I went to Northeastern here in Chicago and did an exchange program in Limerick, Ireland, and went to the University of Limerick. And again, you know, didn't have to learn another language, but got to learn another culture. And it was not just one. You know, when you're over there, I went to Scotland, I went to the UK, you know, everywhere in the UK, and to London, England, all around. I got to do a stand-up tour up and down Ireland. You know, it was really, and I feel like I came back a better comedian because I had to rewrite all of my jokes because they don't have 7-Eleven in Amsterdam, and they can't relate. So it was a really unique experience for me in the sense that I had to really redefine my approach to my own writing style, because this is a cultural difference here, and that's not something that translates well on stage. So coming back to the United States, I really had to do another kind of hard shift and readjust back into, okay, we do have 7-Elevens here. That joke will fly. Like, I can kind of revert back to my original material. But then moving forward, I found I had this ability that no matter where I went to perform in America or around the world, that I had this learned adaptability, and it made me feel, I think, freer to have experiences outside of Chicago. So curious how you felt being back in Wisconsin after that experience.
yeah, I mean, adaptability is a nice aspect to it. I kind of grew up in the same town my whole life. Same people. I went to college, found a crew. You know, everything was very comfortable. You know, I do think people that like move around a lot or have a lot of different experiences find themselves to be more adaptable. So, yeah, I was probably searching for some of that. I came back to Wisconsin, I think, reinvigorated, um, hanging on a little tighter to being an artist. I think I even added some art classes when I came back to Wisconsin that I didn't have to, just because I wanted to like flesh everything out and get a little bit more experience. So I went to school for 5 years because of this Australia thing, and then just kind of tacking on some stuff, um, just so that I could use the facilities even. I mean, they had awesome printmaking facilities. So I was doing etching, um, which, you know, is like an acid bath and stuff. It like eats into your metal plates and kind of takes a little bit more facilities than like screen printing. Um, so I came back reinvigorated, and I think I really started to look at ways to kind of blend my two worlds, which was kind of an illustrative, surreal art style, and then graphic design. And so I started, even had a letter form class at I went to University of Wisconsin Stout. That's the Wisconsin school, where we learned how to like hand do lettering. And that was really big for me. So then I kind of started, I think some of my last projects, I was doing a little bit of my own lettering. I did my website, marqspusta.com, that senior year of school. Um, and then I did a deck of playing cards, which maybe you've seen. And they
I've
were all
got
kind
one.
of like
Yeah.
combining this illustration and design style and kind of pitching myself as that, as which ended up leading to kind of, I don't know, interesting little logo projects or the cover of a local paper that was illustrative, but also needed fonts on it and lettering on it. Um, and somehow eventually that led to gig posters. It's not a clear path, but I came back blending things, reinvigorated, and pretty excited to start my freelance career and be done with school, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, I resemble those remarks. And I'm kind of curious, when when did the notion come in, or rather, I was going to ask, when did the notion come in to be out on the left coast and be more in the Bay Area, but then I realized I don't even know if that was your first stop. So what was the process of getting to where you are physically now, from Wisconsin, and what was the impetus for that?
I lived in Wisconsin for a handful of years after graduation. Um, yeah, Madison, which I love that town and had a lot of friends in that town, and it was a great place to start. But yeah, you're Chicago.
Oh,
So
I had a buddy who went to UW-Madison. I went up for Badgers games all the time. I love it there.
yeah, we party a little too hard and the cheese is a little too good. And honestly, I was just like, I didn't see the healthiest version of myself in Wisconsin. No disrespect. I've plenty of friends who've surpassed the Wisconsin things that can pull you down and are living great lives out there. And it's a beautiful state. And I do love Wisconsin. But I had a lot of friends from Wisconsin that were actually in the Bay Area. And I did my senior year of college, I really started to find like the poster scene. There was an Art of Rock catalog, or I forget exactly what it was called, where they would kind of sell reprints of the '60s stuff. And one of those got in my hands, and I just like kind of flipped for it. And then even like my senior year, I was doing presentations in art history on like the psychedelic poster scene of '60s San Francisco Bay Area, and I just like, I mean, the Fillmore was just like some crazy thing in my mind that like built all this music scene and the history and the posters. And uh, so I had a bunch of friends in San Francisco, and I was like, and there was a really cool art scene here at the time. Um, I'm kind of forgetting, like Giant Robot was here. There was a bunch of things, like a bunch of cool galleries. Jeremy Fish's career was just starting. He was, uh, Juxtapose magazine was something I was into, and they were having a lot of shows in the Bay Area. It just seemed like where all my art dreams were kind of like, that was a hub. And I, like, my best friend and a lot of people I knew from Wisconsin lived out in the Bay Area. So I just moved. I just packed up my U-Haul and drove it out to the Bay. Nothing. I didn't have a job. I didn't have an apartment. Parked it at my friend's driveway for a month and a half until I got a house. Um, I had some freelance jobs, and then I had to work at the Art Institute as a graphic design teacher to kind of like balance it out and make enough money while I tried to build my art career. And then I was finishing up that children's book during that move. And then that kind of led me into some of like the San Francisco things, like getting a job at the Fillmore, being a Fillmore poster artist. That probably came, it's actually right when I left San Francisco to move to Oregon that I finally got that job. And then I bounced around and slowly came back down to the coast. And that's a long-winded story of how I ended up back here. But I'm really happy to have access to San Francisco Bay Area. I've lived in 4 places in the Bay Area, and I just keep moving down the coast a little bit away. The last 3 moves, and I'm here. This is my backyard. I don't own that land, but we're right by the ocean, about 30 minutes south of San Francisco.
I mean, I feel like that's the way to do it. Like, if you're gonna do it. Like, you can't wait for that nudge, that pretense, waiting on someone else to tell you it's the right time. When you feel it and it's the right time, then you do it. And not everybody does. And it's really cool that you had the notion and you mixed the potion and you went went out and got it. And you mentioned something there that I'm not going to let slip away. 2 things. Stanley Mouse in particular, though, I mean, really iconic, in my own life. And it's really great to hear from an artist that whose work I love so much, that like that mindset of like, if I'm not going to do it and get it done, it's not going to get done. So let's just do it. That's how we started this show. And, we didn't have a camera. We didn't have this microphone. It was, at the end of the day, it was still going to be me, and it's still my voice and the guests I bring on. And we knew that the rest would come with time. And to have that kind of, to hear that kind of path echoed is really, really, really cool. And the second thing, you mentioned this job at the Fillmore as a poster artist. What exactly? I'm kind of curious as to what that means, because was that your entry into like live music art? Was that what does that mean, a poster job at the Fillmore?
It was one of my very early poster opportunities. I do not do poster jobs like that anymore, because that would be working for the promoter, and not really creating merchandise, which is a cool thing about the Fillmore. You go there and they give you the poster free when the show is over. They've been doing that for a long time. And I got to work with Arlene Osasiewicz, who had designed a bunch of posters in the 80s and 90s. And she was a great art director. And, I got to put in lists of bands I really liked. And if she felt like I'd be a good fit, she'd hit me up. And they had probably a rotation of about 20 to 25 people they'd call, some more often than others. Greg Gordon, Gig Art was one. Matt Lunig was doing them when I was doing them.
Friend of the show.
Yeah. And we would kind of chat about it. One time, I think they put us in competition. Oh, that was Another Planet, another promoter. So back then we used to do a lot of try to connect with the promoters, and you'll probably hear this from other poster artists. But now the posters have become such a strong merchandising thing, and bands really need to merchandise, that I don't really mess with the promoter stuff anymore, because it's not always on the up and up with the band of how you're making the merchandise. A lot of times it is a good relationship if everyone's in collaboration. But I wanted to be kind of working with the bands. Now, my first thing in was the Black Crowes. And because I had the Black Crowes in my portfolio, I think I just had them and children's book illustrations. And I think that's what I showed the Fillmore. And they actually gave me some opportunities. So both the Black Crowes and the Fillmore definitely took a chance on me and let me kind of make what I said I was going to make, even though I hadn't yet really made it. It was just kind of like some illustrative work, some graphic design work. Hey, I'm going to merge these. I got this thing I'm going to do. But because of that, because I did the book with Joel Harper, and then kind of went on, Ben Harper came and played in Australia, kind of hung out with those guys and the Innocent Criminals. And he had picked up Mark Ford as a guitarist, who had since left the Black Crowes and hadn't played in a while, and is just such a good guitarist. Listened to Black Crowes, Southern Harmony and the Musical Companion and Amorica, and he's so perfect on those records. But he was playing with Ben, he liked my book and was kind of like into it for some reason. I mean, Joel was definitely pitching it to the band, and then he went back with the Black Crowes, who were like my favorite band. And then they get him back, so they have their ultimate lineup. And then I like hear from Joel, I think, like, hey, Marq's pitching you to the Black Crowes. And I'm like, no way. And my first gig ever in the music industry was Black Crowes, Madison Square Garden, Trey Anastasio opening up. I'm just so I just thought like my world was made. Um, but then I realized, oh, this one which was supposed to be a poster, it ended up being a t-shirt design. I'm like, however much I got for a t-shirt design, I just thought I was on top of the world. The money's gone, and I have this one amazing portfolio piece. But the Black Crowes were really awesome in hiring me a ton during those early years. They gave me tons of opportunity. Amy Finkel was the director for them. She did like all the art direction for like Without a Net, Grateful Dead. She had all these Rick Griffin stories for me of like, so like as soon as I got in, it was just like, I'm hanging out with Chris Robinson and Kate Hudson and hearing about my favorite artists by my art directors. It was all just like pretty awesome all at once. And then later I figured out how to turn it into a career and do these screen prints and all that stuff. But it was kind of like a big boom. And then I almost went broke because it felt so awesome, but it wasn't like the full career. It was just like amazing little gigs here and there.
So when did you figure out how that, and that's really important that to note that, because that shouldn't be understated, that realization, I think Jerry said it best, you don't quit that day job no matter what they say, you don't quit that day job till the night job pays. When did you have this moment when you realized, wait a minute, not only do I need to sustain, I need to maintain in this?
I needed to do more than maintain, man. I was having kids. I got 3 kids. So it always felt like, how do I level up? How do I take this farther? Art's part of it, but it's not really all of it. I'm not like the most talented guy in a scene, but I do think I'm selling more art than a bunch of people that are more talented than me, because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to like sell art to people and have those people be excited to get it. And, you talk about looking at my prints to see if I'm embellishing them or stuff. I want those packages to have some mystery, to have some excitement. And it's kind of about like me connecting with you guys. You're a collector of mine. That's why I'm including you in this. You're in my store all the time. You keep coming back. And you're kind of the most important thing about leveling up or maintaining. Because the all the bands, I mean, that I don't know. They're doing a lot too. Their music scene and the way they bring fans to me and everything. They're a huge part of it. But I have to go on the back end of it and turn that into something. Like I said in the beginning, I'm working for my favorite band, the Black Crowes. They're paying me good. They want to pay me good, but not buy a house in California, raise a family. Like that's a lot of drawing. So I needed to figure out how to get more legs out of my drawing.
I keep coming back because I love the art, and sometimes I'm lucky enough where it's one of your posters at a show that I go to, and I have one specifically that I want to talk about, and the extras we'll talk about too in a little bit. But before we get there, what I'm really curious about is that we have a whole bunch of things around me in case folks haven't noticed, and we'll get into all of this in a little bit. But first and foremost, one of the, in my opinion, as someone who admires your work, one of the things that makes your art so unique is the perspicacity you have in choosing your paper stock. And I know that Monolith Press has been printing, your art for a long time, and I've always been so curious as to how you landed on screen printing on all of these wild paper stocks.
Yeah, well, it's about having fun with color. When I took that like a screen printing class in Australia I was mentioning, even in those first screen prints, I bought all different color paper. I've been doing it since my very first screen prints. Actually, in middle school, I did the same thing. We did a screen printing thing, and I just felt like that was that was what made screen printing cool. Is you're not just printing it out on a white piece of paper out of the computer. You could take a screen and print it on a shirt, print it on a piece of paper, print it on a box, all in the same day. You could make a whole bunch of different things. Um, and that's kind of where even screen printing comes from. Is it was a little bit more of a utilitarian type of a process, printing on boxes of produce or something. It was like a cheap way to get a bunch of color that jumped off of whatever it was sitting on. Bold ink on top, Um, so in screen printing, early when I was working with mouse, if you look at my earlier posters, I didn't quite have the vibrancy in color that I have now. I think I realized I wanted to get more vibrant, and it took a little more experience with working with monolith. It costs a little more money to print out all the different colors because the first thing I lay down is wherever I want the ink to really pop, I'm printing a white layer down first. So there's an underbase on all my jobs. And
Really?
that kind of gives my paper, it puts every print on the same playing field because I have the white underbase for the character or whatever. And I let a lot of paper show through in most all my work because I like that about screen printing. I like the different papers. I like kind of that. I just find big flat color like that kind of beautiful. I think they look good on a wall. They look good when you frame them. So yeah, but by doing that underbase, I can really play with different varieties of paper and color. And we've had plenty of things that haven't worked where the ink hasn't stuck or whatever. But even those mini jobs in the beginning, I'm like, all right, I'm going to buy all the color papers, all the kind of papers, and we're just going to try it and see what happens. And I have scraps that nobody's seen and some things that people collect that was like, I printed on a translucent paper that got a little wavy because the ink was too heavy. And there's tons of things like that, but I'm always experimenting. I'm buying paper. I have paper stockpiles. I think a lot of artists actually just ask what their printers have, and so they'll use the foil and the white or whatever. But I have companies I buy from way in advance, and Monolith probably they probably don't love housing a bunch of my paper because it seems like a pain in the ass. These are 40-inch by 26-inch sheets of paper you don't want to bend, and I'm asking him to grab this sheet, this sheet, this sheet, and this sheet out of my stack. But he's awesome, and he knows that's part of my world. Um, and then papers get discontinued and new ones come out, and it's always fun to kind of see what's out there. And yeah, I love playing with the papers, and I think the papers even shine more sometimes because I'm printing small. And it's like you can kind of feel the weight of the paper, or like you get a couple different versions and get the different textures, and then you can compare how they look. And I'll say one other thing on this topic. I just love the idea. I'm doing multiples. That's screen printing. That's my business model. I'm going to sell 300 of these prints. If it's a band poster, maybe I'll do 150 because they've already done 500 to 2,000 or whatever, and I'll get my version. But I love having different versions of that art to share and experience, and people to maybe change their mind on what they want in their living room or which one they thought they liked more. And then I love the idea of people online and in social media kind of getting packages that are different, even though they all bought the same thing. So there's like a comparison, there's a sharing. Here's what I got, here's what you got. Um, and I'd watch my kids watch these unboxing videos for Hatchimals or whatever it is. And they want that sparkly gold rare one they saw in that one YouTube video, and all that stuff's fun too. So I just love that variety that I can kind of create within the same image. And even with the shirts, every time I print a shirt, it's like a new colorway, maybe a new style. Let's try it on this. Sometimes I'll force like a purple on you guys. Like, hey, how do you feel about this?
Purple's my favorite color, by the way, so I have no issues with that whatsoever. I will say this though. One thing that you said really struck so true with me, because just off camera here on the wall, I have your print, A Sprout Amongst the Doubt, and for me, it's one of the prints that I take a lot of meaning from, because just because personally, I just have a personal connection with that image, and I have 3 of them, and one is on blue, and one is on olive, and one is on pink. And if I'm feeling a certain way, I can rearrange them, but it's all the same, but it's all different. And there's something to me personally that's just inherently magical about that.
That's cool. And you're talking about, you have the bigger version of that print. I think on the mini version, I printed the heart. He's kind of a heart character. He's kind of like disappointed. And I printed him in red and in blue, because I love the idea of like a blue heart. Like maybe that's like a cold heart or a sad heart, or maybe not, maybe a red heart's oozing with love or fire, who knows, but even just changing the color of that character in the background he's on can change the vibe. And that's another one where actually I feel like the title might even change the vibe, which I try not to do. I try to leave my titles really ambiguous, but I think that title is kind of reiterates maybe what that piece is about in some way, or the vibe of it. It's like a little inspiration. You have inspiration and love in you. You see little bits of inspiration, but yeah, the world's depressing. There's a lot of things to rain on your parade, and it's okay for your light to not be shining as bright, but like realize that we do have that in us, and we can find it in the little things. And that's why I would kind of like, he's looking at a little sprout growing from the ground, but I think that's a big inspiration for me. Just like life always prevails, and I'm sitting on concrete right now, and there's so many plants that are just like, fuck this, and they're just coming up through it.
And, just kind of building off of that, I keep glancing over, and I'll pop a picture on the screen so folks can see what the image itself looks like. And, what strikes me is there's a little star above the cloud, and he's got this kind of shocked expression on his face, and the cloud is clearly not in the mood. And this little character here is sitting down. I don't see sadness. I see yearning for hope and looking for that one spark to keep them going, and just believing that the seasons will change and the time will come, and it will happen. There's this magic in nature that I love when I get to see trees and flowers bloom. It's this persistence and this acknowledgement of this feeling that there is some order, and there is some right, and there is always hope. And it really is something that I connect with. And when I was talking with you before the interview, I asked if there was a particular shirt you wanted me to wear, and you said ask wear one that you want to talk about. And I know this is an image that gets talked about quite a lot for our readers and listeners. I'm wearing a t-shirt with the image called Inspired by Life. And what I love the most about it, and then I'll ask a quick question about it, but what I love the most about it, and the reason it's my favorite image, I know, and we can get into how, where it came, and we're going to get into where it came from and all that. But just personally, the reason I love it so much is because nothing terrifies me more than the deep sea. and in almost like an awesome way, in that, like, we know that there are these caves where maybe there's a megalodon in there, and we know more about space than we do about the ocean. And it's almost this like terrifying fascination. And I see this little guy looking down into what could be something collected from the ocean depths, and his mind just explode. I mean, like, it's not scary. It's interesting. It's inspiring. And that's personally why it's my favorite image. But I know there's so much talk about it specifically, and I've heard bits and pieces, but where did this image come from?
Well, it might feel weird to talk about it for too long because I don't know exactly where I was coming from on it. But I never really intended it to be what it became. It kind of got thrown on a print job at the last minute, and that's why it's such a small print. I think I printed it alongside a Ben Harper poster. Just had a little room off to the side. It was a sketch I had, and I actually had sketched it out for the Flaming Lips during the Pink Yoshimi and the Pink Robots period. Um, and they didn't go for it. I forgot if that was for a promoter or what. I kind of liked the sketch, so I actually drew it. It's a small print, and it's probably smaller than on your shirt, the actual print I did of it. But I drew it like this big. It was like a big poster sketch. I used to do my poster sketches full size to really feel them out. Um, yeah, and I think Wayne Cohn was like flying out of the top, with the balls,
In
and
the
he was
bubble,
kind of had
yeah.
all the balls and stuff. So there was a bit of that vibe. And even Yoshimi was about battling these robots, but I think they were like sad at one point, and I think Wayne Cohn kind of had them dripping with like weird emotions and how do you view these robots? So I was thinking about some of those things, and now even looking at it and talking about it, I almost feel like I want to relate it to AI, but I didn't really. That's a pretty old image. AI was not really a term then. Um, but maybe that's what I want it to be about now, is like, where these machines, we're kind of like designing them to suck all our creativity and kind of reprocess it. But they are just inspired by us. Yeah, but even that inspired by life image, I just feel like, uh, yeah, it's what if these AI can actually, like, right now they're just taking all of our creativity and kind of reprocessing it. Feels very kind of flat to me, and there's kind of like never a really cool idea behind it, but it's just kind of like everyone's ideas kind of combined into a thing. And so it's not really inspired by life yet. Maybe it actually, having inspiration would be really scary. But that's kind of like, for this machine, he's actually like grasping like life in a new way, and it is blowing his digital ball mind, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I love it, and it has become an image of somewhat lore in the fan community, and one day I hope I'll have one, but I'm glad I have the shirt, and it's fascinating how things that we don't think are going to be anything turn out being like the number one topic of conversation for so long. And you mentioned AI there, and I think what your art embodies is actually the inverse or the opposite of AI. It's IA. It's the individual affect, and there is no, like you mentioned, that level of inspiration that comes in the drawing. Seuss didn't have AI. We go back to Bill Watterson, and all the greats that you mentioned earlier. The inspiration came from inside the bubbles in our mind. And what you do with your art is you put this individual affect on it, which is almost like defies what AI is capable of because it's not emotional.
Yeah, I I want a lot of things in my art that just are like little individual ideas that are kind of hiding and can kind of come out to you in different ways instead of just kind of drawing one idea, one concept. I'm trying to I'm drawing for days. I might as well keep including ideas and thoughts and new perspectives into these things. Um, I think the one thing about that inspired life image that makes it a little like lore, and kind of going back to my earlier career when I printed it, like I said, I just threw it on the side of a job. It was a poster job. I wasn't printing my own art print jobs that cost thousands of dollars. I didn't really have that extra money then. And I just kind of made it, and I think I sold them for $8. And I think that's part of the lore, is like what that print sells for now. But there's like a bunch of my early work that I was kind of experimenting with these smaller sizes, mini prints, taking posters and turning them into art prints. And um, none of that stuff was like selling out right away. And I mean, so, and now those, I was only making 100 of those prints back then. So now like those early prints that I sold for nothing are kind of like the collectibles. And that's pretty fun. That's pretty cool.
It really is. And I actually, getting on to, the bits and pieces that come out as art prints, I'd always wondered, um, when you are making a gig print, well, and there's a few questions that I have here, but I think first and foremost, based on what you just had to say, do you first have like an amalgam of little drawings that you decide, oh, hey, maybe these all fit together for this purpose? Or is it more so once you've created this design, you parse out little things that fit for smaller prints?
Yeah, I'd say it's more of a parsing out thing for the most part. Like a bunch of my mini prints, those are kind of like small drawings I like to do, or like you said, taken from a bigger print. Um, but my posters are, I sit down with a sketchbook. There's probably one false start where I'm not kind of going with that first layout, and then I'll start to feel it out on a page, really loosely, and I'm kind of going to town at that point. I'm not looking through sketchbooks to try to find ideas or something. There's not many sketches I have that I'm not using. I'm pretty like I like to know I'm drawing for a reason. That's not good practice. That's not what artists advise. I mean, you're supposed to sketch, you're supposed to practice, you're supposed to like work things out. But I'm like, what am I making this for? Pretty much every time I hit a sketchbook. And that's why I even sell my sketches and stuff, because I don't have sketchbooks that are in any organization. I have them scattered around the house. Um, Big ones for posters, little ones for characters. Um, and rarely do the characters jump into a poster. Maybe something about the concept does, but I think I like making my posters complete, having a lot of little things go on. And if one of those jumps out as like, gosh, that feels like more of like a Marq Spusta character than a Dead and Company character or than a Goose character. That feels like me. Some
Well,
bands don't give me that creativity as much, where I feel like I'm me. I feel like I'm creating for them. But some of these bands really, Dinosaur Jr. was one of the first ones where I was like, Jay Mascis and Dinosaur Jr. really like my art, my characters, my weirdness. I'm not drawing for what I think they'd like. He would actually look at my sketchbooks and find things he liked in my world. So it kind of depends on how much I feel like it's mine if I
that's
reprint it.
I mean, and the one that comes immediately to mind for me personally is the horned little furry thing from the Green Sky Bluegrass poster. Because I saw that character in the poster, and I was just like, yeah, that's a Spusta character. That kind of just absolutely is, and it makes sense. Like now that you kind of say that makes sense to me in a much different way now.
That is actually incredibly right on, because Paul Hoffman of Green Sky, who I'm friends with, um, he was pretty excited to get me to do. Now that was my second poster. That was going to be for their whole tour, and he was getting disappointed because I actually had a couple false start sketches, and he's just like, these are. Can it just be more you? These feel like I think I was trying to be too Americana or too bluegrass or something and not weird enough. And his art direction was like, can you just draw something that's like more you? And so that's perfect. Yeah, I
Yeah,
drew one of my characters.
I mean, and to me, so that's the example of what I would say would be a Spusta character coming out of a print and being on its own. And then the the gig poster that, if I could pick one to talk about, now I will say the two earlier fish prints, the squids and the bird, are from Merriweather and I think Providence. Two of my favorite fish prints. I know that there are, so many to waft through. But one where my wife and I meet in music is Ween. And it happened to be that her first Ween show was at Surly in Minnesota. And
Nice.
and it was your print. And we were I I can't tell you, we were over the moon that we had the opportunity, not just for any old show, but for her first Ween show. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's your only Ween print.
Yeah.
And I do have, the little 7x7 tentacles expanding in my mind. And one of the things that really struck me about the comparison between the gig print and the mini art print is the lack of Ween in the art print, and the little boognish missing, and even from the boat when it's the same character. And I'm just curious, is that more of a creative decision on your end, where you're like, I want the mini print or the actual little screen print that I produce under my name to be more reflective and indicative of my style and not really have the band element included? Or is it more so a direct?
I would say both, kind of. I mean, I think an art print gives, I just did a Goose poster, and then I did art print version called Dazzled. And I mean, Goose expands my audience, but it also restricts my audience, right? Like, that image, I mean, the average person I talk to is not a Goose fan. Not that the average person I talk to is a Marq Spusta fan, but they can appreciate the image. If I was just at an art fair or something, which I don't do, but if I was just trying to turn on somebody new, um, yeah, what is that band context? That would scare somebody. I mean, I have plenty of like Aaron Horkey posters of bands that like no one's heard of, and those are amazing because they're like kind of harder core basement bands people aren't going to even know. Um, but I wouldn't necessarily want like an awesome poster of a band that kind of annoyed me. Not to say that about any band I work for, but I know I wouldn't want that, even though sometimes the art is amazing. I mean, Chuck Sperry is, a great person to bring up here, who does these super elaborate gig posters, but you're almost excited to just see that thing come alive as not a gig poster, and it works so well for both. And I have Chuck Sperry stuff in my house. None of them are gig posters, but I know him and love him as a gig poster artist. So I like having that other thing. I mean, with a boongish guy, that's Ween's thing. That's their guy. If I'm gonna draw that, I'm gonna draw that for them, not for me. So there's probably some instances like that where I'm pulling things out of posters because they are too much about a lyric or about the band, and they're that's why they're in that piece. So doing an art print always gives me a chance to revisit a piece in a little different way. I don't want to just take the title off. I kind of want to, all right, let's figure out what the best part of this is. Maybe it doesn't need the border because that fell into the gig poster, or maybe it needs more of one, or whatever it needs. I it just goes back to me, even like the different colors, like just creating another option to reach more people and be more fitting for more people.
And I will say that that print in particular is rather heavily laden with Ween references throughout it, and little Easter eggs. So it definitely is one of those images that, taken out of context without the band's name on there are a lot of things that may not make sense if a person doesn't know what a Boognish is, isn't a Ween fan. Like it wouldn't seem like it would be maybe more like directly your style, in the same vein as something like Dinosaur Jr., Green Sky. But talking about something
That's
slightly
because Ween's lyrics are crazy, man. I mean, they just lend, that's their lyrics just coming into my head as I'm drawing this, like, oh my God, that is such a funny visual. That is a crazy visual. That is a crazy thing to say in a song, that they are just wild and lend themselves to having a lot of fun in a gig poster and just no directive. I was just like, I can be as weird as I want to be. It's Ween. Let's dig in. Let's go for the trip.
hell
More
yeah.
so than any band, man. Those guys. And
Yeah, I mean they are indeed two wild and crazy guys. I would say one of your maybe more palatable, but also maybe more palatable, or slightly maybe more, I don't know if I want to say corporate, but prior to Dead and Company and prior to the Sphere, you did a Fare Thee Well poster. How did that come up? I'm lucky enough to have one. I was at those shows in Chicago, and that was my introduction to your art.
oh, nice. Nice. Well, I was there with you, and you're going to get posters of mine now and again because, man, if I like I like picking the Midwest because I know people going to those shows. I know Chicago, I know Minneapolis, and Wisconsin. I mean, even Indiana, Deer Creek and stuff. Like, that's where my people go. Billy Strings, I did Madison, and, a couple people from my high school just like, wow, or whoever it is that I knew. So I like connecting with hearing or using those posters as an excuse to hear from some people from the Midwest. Um, Fare Thee Well, I was pretty excited to get that opportunity. I didn't have the best timeline on it. There's multiple reasons I didn't do a screen print poster for that. I mean, one is because they just kept reprinting screen print posters. I don't think they fully respected like limited edition. Um, and that was a connection. The person who got that job to put that together was somebody I had worked for um, early in my career. When I was kind of doing Fillmore and stuff, I worked for a big merchandising company, and I would do T-shirts for tons of bands. Um, uh, that was just like you get a couple hundred to $1,000 per design. You move on to the next one. They pitch it to the band. Maybe they use it, maybe they don't. I was just generating a lot of stuff at that time. And then when Fare Thee Well came around, I feel like he knew me from that, but I was also, I mean, they kind of hired like some of the hotter artists at the time, and I feel like I was at a pretty good place at that time. Um, that was an exciting gig for me. Like that was a big deal, and that's something I wanted. Um, and I hadn't done a lot of dead stuff at that point. But they hired, Welker and Dubois, who's behind you, um, and uh, Richie Beckett did a beautiful one. Like they were hiring a lot of people that were pretty prevalent in the gig poster scene, and that I think were getting comments on gig posters or espresso beans or whatever. Um, so I was happy to get that job, but I feel like I was picked because they knew me, and I was also a collectible artist at that time. Even though I didn't, it's a lithograph, so it had a little less collectability, but I remember having a pretty tight timeline. I think everyone did. I think that like the merchandising to that or who they picked for that came kind of late. And I remember I was in Hawaii when I got that job and I had just started my vacation. And I knew coming back I didn't have a lot of time to work on it. So that was like, that was kind of a all in, all at once type of a poster. And what an epic event. And I think that really kicked off kind of how big the Grateful Dead can be without being the Grateful Dead.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a magical scene, man.
absolutely. It really was. And I mean, to be able to, be in Soldier Field and like use Bill Walton, rest in peace, as my homing device. Like I knew every time where I was sitting in relation to Bill Walton. I would
Me
just use
too.
him
Me
as
too.
my.
He's an icon. Yeah. He was
I,
everywhere.
and you could see him from wherever you are. So it's easy to be like, okay, I'm 60 degrees from Bill Walton in this section of the stadium. Fantastic. All right. Um, it was exciting for me though to see because it was a lithograph and you don't really step too far outside of screen printing. However, one of my favorite prints of yours of all time, which we actually just got framed, is Voyamus, uh, which is
Oh,
a which is a Giclee, I believe.
yeah.
And I am just kind of curious as to like what prompts something like Voyamus to occur that's a little bit non-traditional, non-standard. Is that a just like a whim personal preference or just like, hey, I want to try something new this time? Or is it because this image fits this printing style?
I long to draw and paint more than I do. Um, I'm like I said, most of what I do is pretty focused on the projects I have at hand. Uh, I create like even my mini jobs. I schedule that. I'm like I need to do that. That's important. So I'll like kind of create my own jobs too sometimes. But I think like a Voyamus or even that Fare Thee Well, just because I knew I wasn't doing a screen print, it gave me the opportunity to blend blend colors and depths in different ways. Screen printing has all these limitations that artists are taking to the extreme on fighting those limitations and making them beautiful and making screen print more refined. I even just talked to my screen printer talking about how tight the resolution can be on these things and how much tighter it's gotten. And my printer is reprinting Rick Griffin designs from the 60s. And Rick Griffin did amazing things with screen printing back in the day where he would like, take X-Acto knives and scrape off things on the films and like get into like all these layers that were less tangible to the artist then because they had to go to the printer. Now we can do those digitally. But I'm doing that process so much and screen printing so much that I do just kind of want to like do that Australia thing again where I just go paint and whatever. But I'm too much on the hamster wheel of what I'm doing. I'll keep doing the posters and always have screen printing going. Um, but like a color pencil drawing or I love doing washes with different kind of water soluble inks. Mix that with gouache and acrylics and just play with all these supplies, even include markers. I love the immediacy of it. I can make something. My first Giclee I did was called The Was, and I remember it was like a pencil drawing of a little wizard guy. And then I brought in the computer and I did all these backgrounds and I made it really fast. And then I sold it really fast. Like I could do it all within a week or two. And screen printing is like a long-winded ordeal, like buy the paper, set it up, press date, get it printed, come back, sign, photograph, all that stuff. Some of these other images we're talking with Giclees they're just more immediate. And those are going to be my paintings. Those are going to be my really blended things. Maybe I'm trying to include some realism, like my Dirty Side Down album cover, where I took a photo of like an old Jeep and photographs, and I merged that with my illustration styles. And I'm actually trying to create like like a world, whereas my screen print posters are very much like drawings and illustrations, because that's what the process kind of lends itself to for me. So the Giclees are about painting, about blending, about having fun with art supplies.
It's your, I mean, getting back to the Australian aspect of it, it's your walkabout. You know, it's what you do to take the side road from time to time, and it's awesome to have that extra outlet. You know, to be able
They're,
to.
those are freeing type projects. Back during COVID, I was doing those Twitch sessions. I don't know if you ever caught any of those, but I was
Mhm.
like drawing live, which I do in
The
shows
VS
for
series.
the VS series, which is a series of 20 prints that like each one I probably spent like an hour on, didn't really know what I was doing, drew them live and then made them into prints. And then I do drawings for people. But there was an immediacy to that I really love. It almost kind of taps into the fact that we love that, like the music scene and the immediacy we can get from like a band playing live. And my poster world and my making these screen prints is kind of the opposite. It's like writing the song in your basement for months before you get to play it live. And I think even with that Twitch or just that style of art, like making something that comes out within a session feels really good, because it's my I work on my stuff forever. So like to just get something done and kick something out and have paint hit a piece of paper and action happen is exciting to me and something I long for. But it's probably not the best career path. Maybe it is. Maybe someday.
Hey, it's never wrong to long for things, man. It's always good to have those things we're striving for.
Like you said, little divergent paths that I can kind of come back like that. I think that's kind of what makes me feel good and whole as an artist, is not to be too on one path. And
To be well
even these gig
rounded.
posters kind of are like different things, and then I'm done, and then what's next, and I'm never feel too bogged down by projects. And when I do, they uh they get exhausting, and I'm like, oh, why did I turn that into such a big thing? You have something behind you. The Widespread Panic album cover that I did, we did like 7 single covers. So it's like the album cover is like
Yeah.
a full image, but then it has all these different images that became covers for the singles, and then t-shirts. And that was like exhausting. That was a long, long walk.
I was wondering about that actually specifically. As, as you can see by me having the album there, I thought that was, and I know you've done a lot of work with Widespread over the years, and I mean, the Dirty Side Down, I think, is a great example of like that blend of surrealism a little bit, and you know. I was genuinely, that was on my list of questions, was like, it's one thing to do, like we have here, the big old nasty get down, 2 7x7 screen prints that came with the record, friend of the show, John Hines, shout out, buddy. And, then you have, not only was this an album cover, there was a 16x16 print. There were 7 mini prints made out of images that were within those prints. I mean, first of all, how do you start that? Like, how do you even, was it set out from the beginning that, hey, we want you to make a series for each track on the album?
It was.
Mm.
Um, I think this kind of burst out of some not very sober conversations I had with the band and people in the band at Widespread Panic shows. When they came to California, I did the poster and did a pop-up art show, and just had my bucket overflowing with Widespread Panic goodness that weekend, and started talking to them about kind of the next thing and some visions I had. And um, the visions I had weren't necessarily what we did. They were a little different direction, but I think they got the idea of me kind of using my art for like an album cover to like expand it a lot more and turn it into a thing. And Dinosaur Jr. kind of did that with me to some extent too, where during that period, when I was doing the cover for Farm and some of Jay Mascis's solo stuff, um, we were doing many singles, many t-shirts. They were buying up my art, and they just kind of wanted to keep fleshing out this world they were creating. And Jay Mascis and Dave Schools of Widespread are actually friends, and a connection in the music industry. And, maybe that even inspired how he wanted to release it. Uh, yeah, just kind of like celebrating each song and each song individually, and making the artwork about the songs and fitting those songs. And I think it was a cool way to kind of create an album cover that was about a lot of bits and pieces that were in it, instead of just like a vibe of the whole thing, which was the Dirty Side Down album cover. I mean, that doesn't really, like, it kind of fits the whole album, but it um actually, that album cover, Dirty Side Down, the band actually had me illustrate. If you look at the back, there's the yak shack. There's a yak in a shack. And if you look at the spread on the gatefold, it's something from the Little Prince book, kind of. It's kind of part of that story, and about the guy who wrote The Little Prince. And Saint X, the song on Widespread, is about that. So even for that album, different band members wanted me to illustrate different parts of the record, and they actually just put them all together in a gatefold. And there's essentially 3 different pieces of artwork that were together. So 10 years later, when we did these 2 records, Hailbound Queen and Snake Oil King, I think they wanted to expand on that and kind of approach it. Snake Oil King, I did multiple singles. I think I was 4 singles in before I did the cover. And then they said, let's switch it for Hailbound King, or Hailbound Queen. So for Hailbound Queen, let's try to illustrate the whole cover and then pull it back and pull out all the bits and pieces. So I don't know, man. It was kind of a mess.
It just sounds like a wild and chaotic. I mean, like the end product is wonderful. Like, I mean, from the music to the art to and everything in between. But gosh, that. I mean, just it seems just like it's like, even though the end product is wonderful, that's so chaotic. I mean, like, it just seems like, for me personally, I mean, like, I'm the kind of guy where it's like all of a sudden shifting gears like that. Like, I can do it, but give me a few seconds to catch up. I got to make sure I'm in second, and you know what I mean? Like, kind of make sure that the ride is going to go smoothly. But like,
Yeah,
for
and Hailbound Queen was coming out during like the election, and there is plenty of vibes on that, that I felt like. There's a song called King Baby. I mean, even the idea of a Hailbound Queen, kind of, Hailbound is like you're walking down the street and you feel obligated to wave to somebody. So I kind of had this queen coming in with like a baby losing his crown, and kind of and they're like, ooh, maybe we don't want to release all, maybe we don't want to. So like, even we were kind of changing our minds based on like the zeitgeist of the day as things were coming out. So yeah, just able to kind of switch gears and like, oh, we're going to take this song off. Oh, actually, we need the final album cover done now. Can you stop working on that single? Oh, we need a shirt for the first one. Oh. So I was just trying to like keep my pool of artwork as versatile as possible, which was a unique experience. And I mean, again, I think I like the shorter deadlines where I can kind of move past, but it's fun to create bigger, long-winded things too and see how they get released.
I mean, you talk about just, I mean, hearkening back to, the beginning of the conversation where, where you mentioned your portfolio consisted of the book you had illustrated and the one gig poster. And now to have, projects like this, in that now very extensive portfolio, I mean, it just goes to show the capability that's there, and that there's more. And I gotta ask, like, what's the feeling of accomplishment, when you create something like this? How does it feel on the other side of something like Snake Oil King and what that project was like?
Album covers feel the best. I think that is kind of often the highest form of creativity that a band can kind of put out into the world. The live experiences are are amazing, and that's where people get uplifted and experiences bleed into the music, and the music gets a new life and you hear it in amazing sound. But the album covers is like, that's where I feel most privileged to be asked to do something. And so I hold all those in really high regard, and I'm really proud to have done the ones I've done, and I'm proud of the bands for their accomplishment. I'm listening to those records and I'm like kind of marveling at their creativity and what they've put together, and being really inspired by it and inspired by that opportunity to define an album. And they've all caught, attention in different ways. Some records don't have a huge long life, but they do. They still exist. People can buy them way after the fact. And Dinosaur Junior Farm, like that one got plenty of attention in the real world, as like Rolling Stone and Pitchfork, and I think NPR put it in their top albums of the covers of the decade. And like, that was cool to just kind of reach a different audience, and just to like visually define. You're reading Pitchfork. You don't have the album. You don't have the music. Maybe you're listening to it, but you're probably just reading a review, looking at that record cover. And those are your two things to go on. It's music, and you're looking at art and reading about something, to like, or even to buy a record, right? You're at a record store. I'm a guy that goes to a record store. If I'm buying 10 to 12 records, one or two of them I'm buying because the album cover is amazing. I know the artist, maybe it's a blind buy. I'll do that, man. I mean, it's just like, who did this? This is
I just
awesome. This has
I
got to be
just
cool.
I just looked over at the two records, because I have two little shelves I keep above my record player, and I just like took a quick look over to see what I had, and it's the cover art. I mean, the music is amazing and it's stuff that I love, but it's the Letterkenny Sundart single and $1.99 Romances by God Street Wine, which is one of my favorite album covers of all time. And that's, for me, in both cases, is absolutely part of the magic of the album. I took a print when I went to go get Voyamus framed. I had a print with me by a good friend, Luke Chu, and the woman who was working at Michael's was looking at it and going, "Did he work with Fall Out Boy?" I said, yeah, that same person. He did those album covers in the early 2000s for Fall Out Boy, and those are, became these iconic covers, as part of their catalog, to the point where 20 years later, someone brings a painting into a shop and the person looks at it and goes, "Huh, Fall Out Boy." And that blew me away. I wasn't expecting that. Like, it was not a print of one of those album covers. But I think you have a very similar styles, not to Luke, but in the sense of when somebody sees one of your prints, they know it's one of yours.
Yeah, usually. I did a Paolo Nutini album cover, which is probably my biggest album cover. And I've had multiple people recently. I had like a little thing on my Instagram where I showed some people holding some album covers of mine through the years. And I showed that one, and I had multiple people reach out to me like, "I've known that album forever. I had no idea that was you." But in general, yeah, I think they're like little markers in the way that people can kind of like, they've seen it somewhere. I mean, they may not have seen the gig posters at all, but maybe they've seen a Dogfish Head bottle, or maybe they've seen an album cover in a record store, or maybe they've seen a shirt on you at New Leaf, or like those little ways of like infiltrating their lives with other. I love that my characters can have these lives. And album covers, again, just feel like just such kind of the pinnacle of creativity. They're what I'm into. I love records.
Me too. Yeah.
Even telling you about my inspiration, I think it was the first thing I started seeing, being kind of sheltered. It's like,
Yeah.
but I'm into music. My kids are on Spotify. That's some of the art they're looking into. That every time they click on it or whatever, they're kind of seeing those images over and over, and they get imprinted into your mind because those albums are so, they can be such a part of our lives and define a
So,
period.
two contrasting album covers that were, definitive in my life. Red by God Street Wine, just the simplicity of it, the bold red on top and the bold black on bottom, and just red in all lowercase. And then that music, that album takes you on just such a journey. And then that the cover, it looks bland. You're like, how is it? But then it starts out with Get on the Train, and you're like, whoa, this is not at all what I was expecting coming from behind this. And, another really, really important one in my life was the cover for Waiting for Columbus. I remember flipping through my mom's record collection as a kid, and seeing that record cover changed my life. I mean, it really did. I like just the tomato woman kicked back in the hammock, having a good time, the Japanese lettering on the side, like everything about it just blew my mind. And to this day, it's one of my favorite live albums.
Yeah, that's a great album to bring up. As far as just, I mean, imagine you're a 12-year-old flipping through your parents' records or whatever, and you just see that. You're like, what? I've never seen art like this before. How does this define a music? What could this music be? And I think it even expands. You almost think it's going to be weirder than it is. I think the Grateful Dead are a band that has some really wild album covers, and then or really beautiful ones like American Beauty. And you go in and the music's almost more tame than you would almost expect sometimes. But the art helps you like dig into that depth of the music right away. It almost like prepares you, like it resets your mind and kind of opens you up for a new experience. And that Little Feat record combines just so many weird elements and is such a unique take that couldn't really have existed for any other reason. I just feel like album covers and even gig posters, as far as like signed commission project, they force you into a realm that almost you can't get on your own. As far as a creative person, like, okay, I'm gonna draw the weirdest thing, like Voyamus. I mean, what the hell's going on in that image you're talking about? But if I had to like get a band name on there and also do a couple other things, I mean, it would get even stranger and harder to read what's going on. And I love record covers that can do that. And yeah, you just naming Waiting for Columbus kind of got me on a tangent, because that's certainly like just an inspiring, surreal, fun vibe, weird image. You got, is she drinking a cocktail or something?
Well,
Or
and it makes you, in the same way that Red was kind of absent of all of that. Like, they both make you want to find out what's inside, because like, what could it be that could be packaged so fantastically or so simply? It can't just be that simple. It can't be that fantastic. And then you go into it, and kind of to your point of how it almost sets the tone for the music of the album. The phrase that came to mind is, it's almost a palate cleanser. When you look at the cover of From the Mars Hotel, for example, if I were to pick a Grateful Dead cover and you listen to that album, well, it's not really like outer space music, but it lets you know, this is music taking place in a different realm of possibility. And then you look at the songs on that album, Pride of Cucamonga, Money Money. I mean, like, it's just, it just makes sense as a unit.
yeah, it's a perspective changer. Yeah, I like the way you put that Mars Hotel one. It's, man, is the album this deep spacey? Well, no, we're gonna play some real instruments, but we're gonna try to take you somewhere, like, and I think that helps set it up instead of a picture of a bunch of guys on the cover. And not to rip on any of those album covers, they're needed. We have them all. And even, you know, bands do it in different ways. They poke fun at it. They show themselves. Um, But I love illustrated covers and or even the simplified ones. I know I was a little jealous when the Black Keys Brothers won the Grammy for best album cover when it was so simple, but it had a vibe. You could tell there was some old soul shit kind of happening on that record, the way they kind of presented it. I think Patrick Carney brother designed it. I forget his name. But I was like, oh man, I wish they'd give these Grammys to like the most crazy illustrated Mark Ryden doing the cover of Dangerous for Michael Jackson. Like that was the most epic cover of 1993 or whatever it was. But that's not really who gets the Grammys. But but just like you said, like the simple design can kind of have almost the same effect.
Absolutely. So, as our readers and listeners may not know, I have this massive setup behind me of all these things Marq has done, and one of my favorite collaborations of yours was with Record Store Day, because I am also a huge vinyl lover, and I actually bring these with me to school when I teach, and I get to show a new generation of human beings what vinyl is, thanks to these little machines behind me. And I was always curious, how did you get involved with Dogfish Head and Record Store Day and creating these things like the labels for beers and the record players and all, and the slip mats and all that?
Well, I'll say the Dogfish Head as its own entity, as just a brewery run by a creative individual, Sam Caligione. Um, he is into just merging and making beer a part of everything because it is part of everything. So he he got to be a sponsor for Record Store Day, and it helped advertise Record Store Day in liquor stores and vice versa. We did, posters of for Record Store Day with Dogfish Head, and they just kind of became a promoter for it. I think I forgot how they incorporated their beers, but they've done so many beers with bands and musicians. I did one with Dogfish Head for the Flaming Lips. They obviously do the American Beauty beer for the Grateful Dead. And they're just all about those relationships and kind of collaborating with other cool creative entities in the world and merging their worlds. So that's how Record Store Day came to me through that. And those record players are so cool. I just thought that was such an awesome opportunity for that project. When I first started working for Dogfish Head, I would always have him send me as much beer as he could. He actually supplied my whole wedding with beer, which got everybody a little loopier than they realized because that stuff's pretty alcoholic. But the record players, even those, I'm like, oh, this is too cool. And I had him give me like 20 of them or something like that. So I still have some of those record players, and they're so fun for kids and just portability. Um, so I love just that opportunity to bring. Uh, I'm listening to records. It's a part of my existence. It's a part of breaking up my artistic. Get up, pick a new record, flip the record, get up, change what you're doing, take a break, take a step back, do a spin, get into the vibe, and then go again. And so I'm kind of all about like that tactile version of listening to records, which the characters are doing on the covers of those two record players. The second one involves the beer, so the characters are like apricot-ish characters or something, and so they're like the beer that they made for it. Their beer was called Romantic Chemistry, and so it's kind of about like these ingredients mixing, and they're listening to vinyl, and they're getting romantic and all that. So I just a good chance to just put all these weird elements together and create something new. It almost kind of makes me think of that Little Feat album cover we're talking about, where what's going on here? What are we even selling? Are we selling a record player? Are we selling beer? Are we selling the idea of listening to records? It's all of it. And the slip mats are just another nice tie-in. Doing the record covers, anything with music, and I do a bunch of music listening related pieces because it's just such an inspiration for me, and I think it's a side inspiration for a lot of my collectors. We're kind of all about the bands and the live experience, but I assume a lot of us, except for the people just listening to Fish and not really listening to the albums and just the live stuff, or people can get way too into one thing. But in general, I think we all have record collections and we're all like music fans. And the posters is an extension of that. But I'm just kind of doing a 360 around it and spinning.
And based on that, I mean, so what I love the most about it, in addition, I mean, obviously to all the things you listed, incorporating the art into the music, making it a more, I love vinyl for that same reason. It's an interactive experience. You're a part of the music, even though you're not really, playing the music, the instruments or anything like that. You might not be on the record, but you're still a part of that listening process. And the other part I love about it is just like the lateral movement from your art from one medium to another and just taking it and putting it on a record player. And one of my favorite personally, one of my favorite pieces of yours that I own is, this guy here, the blissed out baby bug statue. And the other two favorite pieces are on my hat. The baby bliss bug pin and the blissed out bug on his back pin, and these lovely magnets, of which I'm grateful to have the whole collection and a few one-offs. And I'm curious as to how you decided to break out into those other mediums.
The magnet one is a funny enough little story. And I think a lot of times they are kind of like little stories or little things that happen that kind of turn me on to a new product. Even the mini prints, which has become a thing of mine, was what should I do with this extra paper on a big poster job when I make a weird size poster? Why would I waste this whole corner when I could throw more art on it? But I get because I do so much paper, I get pretty excited if somebody comes to me with a 3-dimensional product. I've done some of my own 3-dimensional products. I haven't liked the outcomes. I did mugs and like the graphics fell off. So I get scared to try new things. Now with that statue or with the record player, someone's helping me do that. So this is Bottleneck Gallery. They work with tons of sculptors. They know the industry. And they allowed for that to happen by making all the connections and making the process as smooth for me as possible. And really bringing more talent in for me to work with and collaborate with. A sculptor. I think for that one, there was a digital sculptor, a real sculptor, and then the initial painter. And then they're each hand painted, which is insane. Even painting like John McLaughlin's guitar was like a chance to do like a 3D something else. That just is kind of so outside of my box. I get pretty thrilled about it. But I don't push hard to make them happen. But whenever those opportunities come my way, I jump on them. The magnets, when my wife and I got married, she bought the magnet press, which she actually wanted to make. I did a bunch of graphics for our wedding in screen print form. And she wanted to make little mirrors. So they're just like those magnets, but they'd have a mirror on the other side. And so she bought all the supplies to make these mirrors. And I'm like, oh, honey, you actually need this like expensive press and this other thing. And I'm like, you know what? I'll just buy it. This is kind of a cool little like object. And maybe I can make something of it. And here we are. I just sent my Gnomes magnet designs 94 through 100. So we've reached 100 in the design, and they're producing those right now. And that's a great chance to put some people to work. My son used to make them, but I usually have Kelly and Jay, two of my gnomes that help run my booth at Trips and have helped me for years and years and years. They usually make the magnets, and I think it's a little laborious factory work that they kind of enjoy while they're watching some shows. So all those are handmade, and they all have a little care into them. And I thought the product itself kind of sucked because they wouldn't hold anything up. So we've added like a strong magnet to the back of each of them, so they're like useful.
I love them. I mean, I mean, it's just lovely for me to be able to have little bits of your art all around my house and to be able to just see like little reminders of some of my favorite prints wherever I go. So you mentioned before, there's little surprises every time somebody orders something from your store. There's some kind of little surprise, whether it's a sticker, whether it's a little mini or micro print, whether it's a, slightly, drawn on print, touched up, and with a little embellishment on it, or something like this, where, I mean, the joy that I had when I saw this. I have no words, but just gratitude. But I've always wondered, why do you do it, and how? Like, how does this whole process work?
Yeah. Well, I do it. I mean, I don't pack a lot of my packages anymore. I do get a lot of help with that. But when I do, I'm really thinking about that person getting this package. And um, they bought one thing, but how can it be better than what they bought? Hopefully the art is better than what they see online. But then they also get like an extra little sticker or a character they haven't seen before. Even on my last release, I think I had 3 different little micro prints that you could get with it that you really didn't know you were getting, and they were all different. And I let like the customers debut them online before I even show them, just to kind of give, I don't know, include people in that debut, include people in that experience of what are they getting. I did a Willy Wonka print a long time ago and had 5 gold versions I put in there. But even thinking about that concept, like who gets the golden ticket? What do you get that's different? And I don't know, I get a stack of prints and packing them up and thinking, oh, 5 of these I could just color on it and they could be different. So all that is, I really want the customers to be excited to open their mail and get something different, unique, slightly unexpected, a little bonus. And I have a team of just so many different people that help me in different ways throughout the years, and they kind of come and go in different ways. And it never, now if you deal with my customer service and stuff, you will get real human names. There are some real humans that help me, because they are professionals. They work for fulfillment houses and stuff like that, and they don't want to pretend they're little woodland creatures. But in the beginning, I had a lot of strange little gnomes helping me, that were a little more mystical, and they're still those type of entities involved in me getting my art to the people. I can't do it on my own. Um, and so, I'm not hiring a bunch of people. It's more just like you can pay gnomes off in cookies and ladybugs and other things, and they can add extra magic. So I just like having that extra help and that extra touch and that extra entity helping out and making these packages special and making some of my items.
And my final question, my favorite thing that you do, out of everything, I mean, even almost more so than the art, is that you make a concerted effort to make sure that a portion of your art sales go to certain charities when they need them. And not just like 10%. It's usually, if I recall correctly, so always between like 30 and 35% of the sale goes directly to the charity. I think that is just such a magnificent and magnanimous thing to do, and I would love to know how that came about, and why you decided to start doing that, and a little bit just maybe about how you choose some of the charities that you choose to support.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. I've been running the Spusta Gnome Secret Stash for, I don't know, it feels like 10 years plus. I think I've charity has always kind of been something I've been taught, like part of my life. Cup runneth over. My parents were successful and very charitable, in a human way, helping an employee that might need help with something, but also in just like, oh, we're going to donate to this cause because we feel this is important and we have this extra money. So that was kind of taught to me. But I think a turning point for me was seeing my stuff was going for so much on eBay and I wasn't getting any of it, and my collectors were spending it, and it was going to flippers. It was going to something. I don't need to rip on flippers. I think I'm a flipper. I got too many records. I need to sell some. I get it. You get too much art, you need to move it. It's trading. It's fun. Make a profit.
When you're making a career out of it and it's like all you do, you're not collecting the art. You're not doing it for the love of it or for the spirit of it for records either. Like the people who line up on Record Store Day to buy, the Taylor Swift Record Store Day one because they know that's going to be the one that resells for the highest. Like that, you're not doing it because you like the music. You're just doing it to make a buck. So I hear you. There's a distinction between the two.
Yeah. And they were making more money off of my work than I was making. It was selling for over double. I didn't want to charge over double for my work. But I came up with the idea of like, all right, maybe I can make some unique items, some hard to get items. We'll put them on eBay and at least we'll be competing with them and giving our customer. I mean, that's the other thing that was happening is it was just upsetting my customers, my collectors. How come he gets it and he's reselling it and I can't get it? Well, I don't know how to do that other than to pick favorites and have like a list of the 100 coolest customers. I mean, how do you do that?
They'll say though, you do more so than many artists that come to my head directly. Luke is one of the other ones that comes right to mind, but it's hard to think of many artists who are so engaged with their fan base and really do listen to what their fans have to say and pay attention, and to the point of even adopting paper names and taking suggestions and your level of involvement with your fans is, I mean, that really makes it make a lot more sense.
And they share with me, they pull me in. I got families into my work and their kids and how it affects them and different ways people kind of experience that disappointment with their own anxieties, or their kid was disappointed they couldn't get this print or whatever it was. All that stuff is like, I make my stuff limited. So I obviously want some of that to some extent. I want a collectability. I don't want to cut too many people off all the time. I don't want to do subscriptions. I don't want to have people collecting all my work. I want it hiddenness. So I want you coming back for more. But yeah, doing the Secret Gnome secret stash just allowed us. I'm like, all right, I'm going to put up work. I want the same dollar that those flippers are getting, but I'm just gonna move that extra money to charity. And I think that helped people feel better about paying the higher price too, because when you pay $300 for a poster, the artist got 40, the band got 40, and the flipper got 220. I mean, that's annoying. That's like, it pains you to do that. So I wanted customers to feel better about having to pay that higher price. eBay gives everyone a chance. It's getting top dollar. I'm not looking to get absolute auction price for my work, but that kind of allowed it to reach a new audience and allow everyone to have a chance and allow us to pick and choose our causes we all feel good about. And I'm trying not to be too political, but I mean, right now, today, if I want to feed hungry people, that's political. This is going to be released later. But there's always, I've had my moments of standing my ground with some political things just because that's the nature of charity and nonprofit anyway. But I'm not, the stuff I'm choosing, I'm just like, can we all just agree to protect the environment and feed some hungry kids?
So,
I mean,
That's exactly what was what I was. So I was shifting a little bit because I was like getting ready to say that, like the organizations that you support are cleaning the ocean, are feeding hungry kids, are helping with education. I mean, these are things that we should all be able to get behind. And one of the great joys that I've had doing this show is highlighting organizations like Mockingbird Foundation and Backline, and it really means a lot to me to be able to give back in that way and raise the profile and awareness for those organizations that are doing work that, I mean, come on, music education, mental health help, like we should all be able, no matter what our political stances or views are, we should all be able to get behind things like that, like the environment, like feeding hungry kids. Like, I don't think that, and unfortunately, like you said, we are in a world today where everything is somewhat derived as political, which is why I try to, leave it out of this show as much as possible. And because this show is really about the art. It's about the music. It's about the love of what we do and what all of the guests who I have on the show, loving what they do. That's enough.
I like capitalism. I do. I like creating things and selling things and kind of being able to create your own path with capitalism. But it is amazing for me that my art can actually like provide some good with some and we can all kind of unite around generating some money. I've been running it for a long time, but I'm proud of the amount we've been able to donate as a collector community just through it. And I'm kind of doing it in the background. So I don't have to think about it that much. Somebody runs it for me. I send them work. They have fun getting work to people in different ways, which kind of allows new buying opportunities, new kind of ways to connect with fans. But just that my silly characters can like kind of raise some funds for some things kind of feels pretty awesome, I
And
guess. Yeah.
I had the opportunity to do that. Thank you again to thank you to the Gnomes for reading my comment and hooking me up with that Red Bride of Frankenstein. I got that framed for my wife's anniversary. Our fifth
Yeah.
anniversary is coming up next week at the time of this taping, and I'm Steiner, she's Frankel, so she is the bride of Frankenstein. So it just was so perfect, and it really it made it all that much more special, knowing that not only am I getting this print, I'm getting it from the Gnomes, so I know that the funds are going exactly where they should be.
Yeah. Thank you. And a little bit to me. So I appreciate that
Well,
too.
but as it should be, as it
Yeah.
should be. So before we wrap up here, Mark, any last words you'd like to share with the audience?
Great job with your podcast. I like what you guys are doing. You are focusing some energy on kind of, I don't know, so many aspects you can really learn things about kind of music or how the industry even works through kind of going through your podcast. I'm curious to listen to. You were just telling me about Thundercats' parents. I didn't realize you interviewed them, but you're kind of going all over the place. You're able to pull in a lot of people, and your questions are on point. It was fun to do this interview with you because you are such a collector of mine. The last podcast I did was a local one, and I love that because you kind of didn't know much about my world, and you are the opposite. You know a lot about my world. You know a lot about the people collecting my work, and so it was fun to kind of get those directed questions from you that felt less about just the cool band I got to work with and a little bit more like where it all comes from.
And
How
oh, no, sorry. Well, I was just going to say we could spend hours talking about the bands, but for me, but I love the art, and it just, I remember making the decision to start wearing your shirts on the show about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, and to be sitting here now recording this interview for our 100th episode, the amalgam of feelings and emotions because this brings together not just the art, not just the music, not just, all of the other wonderful aspects of everything, but also to be able to incorporate it into secondhand talent. I mean, thank you so much. It just really, this has been so truly, truly special for me. And I don't think there's any better way to celebrate 100 episodes of secondhand talent.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that. I enjoyed our build up to it. You and I have been talking for a long time about doing this. To some extent, maybe I got you at your best point. You're 100 episodes in. You're fluent, but you're still pushing forward with a lot of gusto and building something. So yeah, happy to be joining you in this moment. Congratulations on 100 episodes. That's certainly a nice round number. I think I passed my 100 poster mark a while ago, but I should have noticed when it happened, because that's a big anniversary. That's a nice number.
It's unbelievable, but it's happening, and I genuinely could not have picked a better way for it to happen. Folks, this is Marq Spusta. I'm Steiner. This is Secondhand Talent, and we will see you next Wednesday for episode 101.
Keep listening, everybody. Thanks for listening to me. Thanks, Steiner.
Take care, y'all. Bye.